Here we are at Gentiana nursery, just outside of Olinda, and Craig Wilson is going to talk us through the garden border that's at the front of his nursery. At the moment it's spring, and the border does change dramatically with the seasons.
So this is the perennial border, for the want of a better word, at the front of my nursery. It's very different to the perennial border that you would expect to see in the UK or in cooler climates, because in this climate here in the Dandenong Ranges we can have plant material flowering pretty much all year round. There's probably a month or two in the dead of winter when there's nothing here, but for the rest of the year there's always something happening. I've been here in the nursery for 17 years, and the perennial border was established when we arrived here, but in a very different format. It was probably more traditional than what it is now. I'm always tinkering with it, pulling things out, adding things, changing things around, just trying to maintain an interest for passing traffic basically. So the season with the border probably starts in late winter, early spring, where it's full of daffodils and jonquils and the perennials and grasses have been cut to the ground. We're now in mid-spring, and so we're getting some of the early summer perennials, African bulbs and bearded iris, and then later on in the summer there'll be phlox and various other summer flowering perennials, and then in autumn there's asters. This is Watsonia. There's quite a few Watsonia species, some of them weedy, this one's not. It's Watsonia aletriodes. It's a South African bulb, so perfectly suited to Melbourne's climate. This is on the edge of the nursery driveway, so it's an incredibly tough spot. So I just put in some Arctotis, which is another South African. In front of this clump of Watsonia is a herbaceous Euphorbia. It's a bit of a weed. It seeds all through the border, but very easy to pull up, and I just tend to leave clumps of it where I think it's necessary each year. In a perennial border it's quite useful to have self-seeding plants like that to fill in gaps. For some early spring interest, the border's liberally planted with Anemone nemorosa, which gives us pale blue flowers before any of the perennials surface. It takes a little while to be established. It's been here for a long time, but it's a great ground cover. On either side of the sign I have big clumps of Stipa gigantea, which would have to be one of my favourite plants. It needs to be planted back a bit in the border because the foliage is quite untidy, but the flowering's spectacular and will last right through until autumn. It's a slow plant to establish. These clumps have been there for about 10 years now and are finally starting to flower properly, but it's certainly worth the wait. A couple of years ago I put in some of the purple and blue bearded iris, mainly because I wanted them to show off the Phlomis, which is about to flower in front of them and is a rich cream colour, so the two blend really nicely together. It's Geramiun tangerine. It's a long flowering, quite a tall geum that keeps going right through until early summer, and then it'll get cut down to the ground. Across the front of the border along the verge of the roadside I've got a big planting of Phlomis russeliana, which is about to flower. It'll be out in another week or so, and it's incredibly tough. This is quite a dry position in my border, so it's established really well. This is one of the Geramiun oxonianum hybrids, which self-seeds through the border, and I just leave it behind where I want it and pull it out where I don't want it. Medium-sized white bearded iris that I got a piece from a client's garden, probably a really old-fashioned hybrid I'd say. The Cardoon gives us some fantastic structure in the early months of the summer, both for foliage and flowers. It can self-seed a bit through the border, but look, we put up with it. The border's full of big clumps of Lilium regale, which give us some Christmas interest. This is sort of the classic Christmas lily with big white trumpets. Beschenaria yuccoides about to throw up one of its big flower spikes. Selected form of Acanthus called Hollards Gold, which again gives us a great foliage impact. Melianthus major, which will be cut to the ground once it's finished flowering. And again, it's a fantastic foliage plant. Epimedium rhizomatosum. It's a late flowering species which will continue flowering right into early summer. Columbines, which would hopefully seed right throughout the border, but unfortunately the parrots eat all the seeds, so they're kind of stuck in one spot. So we're moving into the more shaded end of the border now. This is a Disporum cantonense, which is in the same family as Solomon seal, but it clumps rather than runs. Epimedium neosulphurum, finished flowering now, but gives us great foliage in the shade border. Oak-leafed hydrangea, or Hydrangea quercifolia, which gives us a bit of interest in the summer in the shaded border. Helleborus fotitis, which is actually a winter flowerer. It's just at the last stages of its flowering now, and it self-seeds and fills up gaps in the shade border. Small flowered fuchsia, which is really, I plant it there for the birds because the honey eaters love it. So I went around my whole garden and pulled out every uninteresting hellebore and moved them all out here onto the nature strip. And in around April I put the lawnmower over the whole lot, cut them right to the ground so that we get a nice clear flowering in the winter. Solomon seal growing up against the trunk of a big tree where nothing else will do. Tolema grandiflora growing in the shade of the big trees. Arum green goddess is probably a pretty safe hybrid from the arum lily, which can be a weed. Potamium, which is another one for the birds. A few hebes that are backed by more Lilium regale. And in the backs the Syringa vulgaris or English lilacs. Arthropodium or Ringa lily from New Zealand, which flourishes in dry shade and gives us some flowers around Christmas time. In terms of maintenance, obviously weeding's an issue, although because of the thick planting, a lot of the soft weeds aren't really apparent. But the biggest maintenance period is in the late winter when it's cutting everything back. I'm a bit of a fanatic mulcher, so it's always heavily mulched and fed with compost.
All of the plants seen in this video and many others are available from Craig at Gentiana Nursery just outside of Olinda in the Dandenong Ranges. For more information on perennial borders and all types of gardening issues, subscribe to the YouTube channel for regular updates. Visit the website to find a wide range of plants that will suit your garden. And as always, good luck with your gardening.